Hey everybody, it's Meredith Miller here with your Asana Q&A Mondays. I'm going to go ahead and answer some more questions. Happy Halloween to everybody. Remember that the link below the video will show you where you can leave a question for these Monday Asana Q&As. You will need to be logged into my website. So if you don't have a personal login code yet for my website, go to innerintegration.com. At the bottom, enter your name and email. You'll get your own personal login. Then you can access that page on the top in the menu. It says Sana Q&As. And then if you would like a much quicker response, a more personal question you have to ask, you want more in-depth answer, check out my personal email support. You will get a response from me, very comprehensive, within 48 hours. If you would like to work with me personally in coaching sessions, I do the Skype strategy sessions, which you'll also see on my website. I do these for people around the world, and I do them predominantly on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in American time on the Pacific Coast. I have some people in Australia, so for them sometimes it's like Friday, but it's my Thursday, right? But so if you want more help, we're going to really get to the bottom of where you're stuck, what you're trying to understand. I'm going to help you break through that obstacle. I'm going to validate wherever it is that you're at, that you're just trying to understand. Usually that's like the thing that's really holding people on, is like they just really need that validation, right? They really, really need that validation. They really need someone to see from the outside and to call something out. And then I'll help you create some steps that you can take to start moving forward. So I'm going to get to this question now, which says, I wanted to ask about how we deal with confused emotions after no contact from a narcissistic mother after 1 year, and setting a strict artificial boundary with my brother, who is also narcissistic. I talk to him only when I need to, when he asks me how my father is, etc. And that's the only way I feel safe. I don't engage in conversations like how am I doing or how I feel, because I know that will be exploited and used against me. On the other side, some days I feel I want to contact him to ask how he's doing since he works abroad. But I have this insecurity that stops me, and instantly I feel grief, sorrow, and a little shame too. I'm just sorry I can't get in touch with him without hurting myself. I love my family despite all the damage they did to me, but I'm struggling getting the boundaries set in place and moving on, as I've learned everything about what happened in the past, thanks to you and other sources on the internet. I haven't spoken to any psychiatrist about all this, and the internet support is the best thing that works now. Is it that I need more time to process emotions? I've had depersonalization and derealisation symptoms for a very long time. Thank you. First of all, great job on no contact with your narcissistic mother 1 year. That's awesome. And great job on managing the boundaries with your brother. It sounds like you're doing a really great job. Like you have clearly learned what to share, what not to share. You know, the minimum kinds of contact you can have with him, mostly about your dad, that sort of thing. And you understand that it's not safe to share your personal life with him. Great job. Give yourself a pat on the back for that, because that is awesome. You know, you've really reached that acceptance, it sounds like, of, you know, who they are, who your mom is and whatnot, and you're mourning the family that you didn't have. You're mourning the mother that you didn't have. And it's very sad, you know, that part of you that you described here. You know, you're just sorry that you can't get in touch with him without hurting yourself. And I think that's the struggle that all of us who came from these narcissistic families feel. Like, it's your family. You feel like you should be able to have this connection and communication with them, but every time you do, you get hurt. Sometimes more subtly, sometimes much more blatantly, right? And it's just dangerous. And it's so sad, because there's this part of you that probably desperately wants to have that familial connection, you know, with your brother. You know, like, some people have amazing relationships with their siblings, and it might be that it can never be that way for you because of your brother's position with your mom and connection to that, and maybe his own patterns. You know, maybe in some ways he's like your mom. And it's very sad to have to accept that. But ultimately, you're right. You recognize it. You can't have that contact without hurting yourself. And I think that's huge because you're really owning that self-responsibility piece. Like, you're not just blaming that other person, you're recognizing you have a choice. You have a choice to contact or not. You have a choice to have minimum contact with very clear boundaries of what you will share and what you won't share, right? And so you're also saying, without hurting myself, like, you fully are admitting and recognizing that your choice to engage is going to lead to you hurting yourself, you know? So it's not just blaming the other person. That's awesome. That's really awesome. That's showing that you're doing great work, because that self-responsibility piece is so important for your empowerment to move forward. When you realize you have a choice, right? That it's not out of your control like you once thought it was, right? Way back when you were in those relationships, it probably felt like you had no control until that one day you woke up and you realized, whoa, I do have a choice. I do have a choice if I want to stay in contact or not. I don't owe them that. Just because they're my family, I don't owe them that. And every time I make the choice to connect with them like a normal person would connect to their family, I get hurt. Therefore, I'm making the wrong choice. I don't want to get hurt. I'm not going to make that choice anymore. So that's awesome that you're empowering yourself in that way. And, you know, I would really recommend to you, like, to fill that void, you know, keep doing your inner work. And also be open to the idea that you could be meeting other kindred spirits and friends who will become like your family in life. Like, it doesn't have to be your blood relatives. It could be that the people who are a lot closer to you, the people who really get you, the people who really support you, the people who are really like you, don't have any blood relationship to you, but they become like your new family. So be open to those possibilities as well. You know, you mentioned the confused emotions, you know, the cognitive dissonance that you probably feel. Like, this person is your family, but every time you contact them, you hurt yourself, you get hurt, right? That cognitive dissonance, like wanting to resolve that, you know, it can lead you to feeling very confused. That's usually one of the primary symptoms that a person coming out of one of these relationships, whether it's family, intimacy, friendship, a neighbor, a coworker, whomever, the primary symptom is that confusion. And that confusion, that brain fog that some people describe it as, is caused by that cognitive dissonance, because your brain, your mind is trying to hold on to two completely opposing realities. You know, this person is family and I should love them and we should have this kind of family relationship. And this person is manipulative and abusive, and every time I engage with that person, I get hurt, right? And so this creates a lot of confusion. And, you know, in order to really set yourself free from that trauma bond, you know, because the trauma bond is what keeps you there in that cognitive dissonance. And so in order to break free from that, you have to put the label, the judgment on that person, abuser, manipulator, psychopath, narcissist, whatever the label is for you, right, for that person. And then really see that truth and really accept that truth, because that acceptance is what shatters the trauma bond. It sounds like you're doing a really good job of that. I don't really sense that you're really in that trauma bond anymore. I think right now it's more like you've accepted it. You've moved through that fifth, you know, layer of grief, and it's like you're at that stage now when you're really mourning the loss of the family that you never had, you know, and that particular family will never be for you. But not to exclude the possibility that you could meet a new family, you know, other kindred spirits in your life who will become your new familia. You know, it might be helpful to get a professional on board if you can find one. You know, you mentioned you might be in another country. I'm not sure what country you're in. I'm not sure what the system is like there. So it's awesome that you found a lot of help in the online community. For a lot of people, that's like the best thing for them. Sometimes it's really helpful to get professionals on board when you're really struggling with things, or you're trying to break through something and you can't seem to break through, and then you talk to this professional and they just see it and they call it out and you're like, oh yeah, that's what it is. And sometimes, and usually, it's like so simple, right? But it's the simplest things that make the most massive changes in our life. And it's funny because it's the simplest things that we most often overlook, because we're like, oh, that's so simple, it can't just be that. We try to make things so much more complicated, right? So it could be a lot more simple. And if you don't feel like you need professional help, then that's great. Then you're getting a lot of help from the online community. Maybe you're getting involved in some of the support networks online too. That can be so helpful, especially for newcomers, people who are just waking up to the reality of what their last relationship was, or what all their past relationships were, or what, back to their original family was, right? So it can be incredibly validating. You mentioned these terms, depersonalization and derealisation. I wasn't exactly sure what that was. I hadn't heard these used in this way before. So I looked it up. I'm putting a couple links here. One is from psychcentral.com. The other one is from calmclinic.com. They're defining these terms for anybody who's curious and wants to read them. But so what I think I'm understanding is that I think this is a result of the PTSD. I think this is part of, it describes something like, when you're suddenly you're watching your life like an outsider, you're watching your life like a movie, right? It sounds like maybe this is happening kind of unconsciously or automatically. It might be like when the anxiety switch, the circuits are overloaded, then it's like you depersonalize and pop out. So what I want to tell you is that's not necessarily a negative thing. In fact, that's what I teach people to do when they're stuck in this situation and they have to keep facing this person for a period of time. Maybe you're still with the family, or you're still in the relationship, or you're still at work, is depersonalize the abuse. So you can use that to an advantage. It's kind of like a superhero power, right? Depersonalizing is when you intentionally, in my experience, right, how I train people is you intentionally separate yourself from that drama. You're no longer in the drama, you're observing the drama. Now you're just watching that person, and it becomes a lot more sterile. It becomes a lot more clinical. You don't have that emotional charge, which makes you want to react. It makes you want to be impulsive. It makes you want to scream or do something that's going to make you look like the bad guy, even though this person is abusing you. So the depersonalization can really be used as a way to create a healing, as a way to create a coping mechanism. In fact, my sense now from understanding what I read is that it is some kind of coping mechanism, right? You can also use it consciously. So what I read, it sounds like this kind of unconscious thing that comes from the PTSD, how where you suddenly will go emotionally numb sometimes, right? Many of you have probably experienced that. It feels like you can't connect to anything, like you desperately want to have that emotional connection, but the PTSD crash hit and now it's like you're numb, and that's some sort of coping mechanism to not be overwhelmed and overloaded with the emotion that you feel. So use it as a gift to observe, right? And to not be involved in the drama. And that way you can see things that you didn't see before. It gives you that space where you can remember to remind yourself to breathe 3 times, right? To breathe before you respond, to not react emotionally and immediately, because that's what the narcissist wants, right? The psychopath, they want you to do that. They want you to react involuntarily and immediately, and then you're in that emotional drama. They feed off of that drama. They feed on directing your emotions, right? So when you depersonalize the abuse, when you depersonalize from that drama situation, they can't get that. They can't get you. They can't get it to stick. And then you can respond from a very rational point of view, where you remind yourself not to get emotionally invested in that. And it's almost like the more you practice that depersonalization, the more neutral your emotional stance can be toward that person in the moment. Now, of course, I recommend afterward, when you get to a safe place and you're alone, you want to, focus on that and meditate with that and maybe journal about that and process the emotions, because maybe you're angry about what they said. And then it was awesome because in the moment you didn't react to that anger, right? You didn't scream at them or do anything that made you look like the bad guy. You took the higher ground. But now that you're alone and safe and in your sacred space, you can process that anger and you want to get it out. You got to get the emotion out. The emotion has to move. It has to flow. And if it stays stuck in your body, it's going to create physiological problems. You're going to develop health problems, starting with inflammation and then autoimmune illnesses, and it can eventually lead to cancers and things like that. When you just keep it stuck inside, it eats at you. So, one of the disadvantages too, if this depersonalization thing is happening to you unconsciously, you might need to set aside time where you consciously focus on your emotions, on connecting to your emotions and how you feel. And that might be really difficult if you're in that numbness stage of the PTSD. You may need to evoke a recent memory, or maybe a long time past memory that really hurt you, really bothered you, something happened, right? Really face that memory and really allow yourself to get in touch with your feeling about that. How do you really feel about that? And if you can't identify that feeling, because sometimes, and sometimes even for men, it's even harder to access that feeling, right? So I tell them, okay, so come to your body, right? Your body is physical. It's a lot easier to identify. I'm like, now where do you feel that in your body? Sometimes they're like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, now if you did know, where do you feel that in your body? And usually people can start to get in touch with that. And I remember, it was not easy to do this, but like many, many years ago, it was like 2003, I was divorcing my husband. I went to a chiropractor for the first time. I'd never done any kind of holistic or alternative medicine. And something was noticeably different. Like, he aligned my spine for the first time in my life. Something was noticeably different, and I was dull at that time. Like, I didn't have a spiritual connection. I was atheist. I was recovering from decades of Catholicism and, the familial abuse and the abuse of my ex-husband and all of that. And I wasn't in touch with myself. And it was like going to the chiropractor and something noticeably shifting in my body, and I couldn't explain it and I couldn't really pinpoint it. And I remembered laying down on the flat wooden floor and just feeling my body for the first time, like really noticing what it feels like to like feel my heart, or to feel my gut, or to feel my knees, and practicing bringing my awareness to different parts of my body. That's a really, really helpful practice if you are completely disconnected from yourself, which might be the case if this kind of depersonalization thing is happening unconsciously. It might be that you feel disconnected, mind, body, spirit, right? And so in order to realign, start with the body, because the body is physical and it's tangible, right? And it seems a lot more real, even though feelings are very real, emotions are very real, your spirit is very real, right? But focus on your body first, and focus on bringing your awareness and your attention to different parts of your body. And the more that you practice doing that, the more connected, the more integrated you're going to feel, holistically speaking. So again, I'm putting those links below for anybody who's curious about that depersonalization and derealization, that terminology. And you're doing an awesome job, hun, an awesome job. I really hope that you're also celebrating that you're making major progress, that you're doing something that is very, very difficult to do. And I'm sending you a big hug.